Hi, welcome back to the Storehouses of Heaven Bible Study with Mary Cremo. Thank you for joining me. And we are going to continue from Genesis 1, verses 20 through 23. And God said, "Let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky." So God created the great creatures of the sea and every living thing with which the water teems, and that moves about in it, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and increase in number, and fill the water in the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth." And there was evening, and there was morning. That was the fifth day. Now, from the most beloved of our critters, sorry, that's my cat next to me, if you can hear him. From the most beloved of our critters in the oceans, the dolphins, to the creepy looking anglerfish, which are apparently, like this big. I always thought they were, the size of my head at least, but no, apparently there's something more like this big. There's those fishes with the little light that glows, and they're way down in the deep, deep part of the ocean. God created them all, and he created all the birds at the same time. So I'm not sure why he created the birds and the things on the earth on separate days, because I always think, okay, they're like the same thing. Amphibious animals, I always thought, were created on the day 6, which is the one where Adam and Eve are created, because they are the ones on the earth. They don't start in the water, they start on the earth, and then they create in the water. So, and yes, in answer to the question, which came first, the chicken or the egg could not hatch itself. It could not hatch itself. Therefore, the chicken came first because of our incredible designer, God. He knows what he was doing. He knew what he was doing then. He knows what he's doing now. It was so perfectly designed, and so perfectly thought out ahead of time. He created all this stuff for the birds to be able to thrive on the earth and in the sky. What he did was he said, okay, let's give them food. Most birds, so chickens, they eat grass. They actually will mow down a weedy patch very easily. And so will ducks. And they also eat bugs. But back then, there was no death. Keep that in mind. They were not eating other bugs. They were eating of the fruit of the earth, which was, plants and fruit from the trees. They were vegetarians. And so the dolphins as well. And you've got to think about how God created the coral in the sea for the dolphins, for the fish, how he created the algae, and how, they weren't eating other fish. Or if they were mammals, they weren't eating fish, because a dolphin's a mammal. But back in the day, a dolphin was considered a fish because it swam in the ocean. Back then, the definitions were totally, totally different from what they are now. Our definitions have gotten kind of picayunish, for lack of a better term. We have to say, oh, well, if the Bible says it's a fish, then it can't possibly have been a whale. Or if the Bible talks about a dinosaur, well, then it couldn't possibly be an actual dinosaur. It was, a dragon in the Bible, or something that swam in the ocean but breathed fire and makes the waters boil around it. That's not a real dinosaur. Well, guess what? The term for dinosaur is less than 300 years old. It was recently created. I can't remember the exact time frame. I would have to look that up because I didn't think I was going to be talking about it this second. But yeah, it is a very, very, very new concept, dinosaur, which means big lizard. That's what the word literally means. And that's how it came about. And actually, the phrase dinosaur also is defined by how the animal stands upon its legs. That is what determines that it is a dinosaur. not the other things. So that's why everybody kind of just attributes to dinosaurs nowadays. In the Bible, when God said something, he was the one who named it, and with the help of Adam, but he's the one who knew who he was talking to as well, which is very important to keep in mind. Keep in mind the time frames that the information was given. Keep in mind the time frames and who God was talking to. And also keep in mind that when God made the world, it was perfect and without sin and without death. If you don't remember that, you're not going to understand the Bible, because it was perfect. God did not make death, which is bad. He didn't create death. Death is the result of sin. It is part of the curse for sin, which is the basic, very first sin was disobeying God. Very much so. So keep that in mind. Also, each creature, each bird was created with incredible variation and care for each of their needs. The camouflage to keep the mama birds safe, and the brightly plumed daddies to help attract females and help them also to lure away the predators that were eventually going to come, because God knew that sin was coming. And so he said, okay, I'm going to keep them safe. And I am going to not only make them really pretty and attract the girls, because the brighter the plumage, the better your diet is. So you're a better care provider for yourself and for your soon-to-be family as a bird, And then also, God did the same kind of thing for those creatures in the ocean. He created, like, for example, an octopus. He is able, and so incredibly intelligent, by the way, he's able to just change his color, change even his shape. He's able to use a coconut shell for a protection. And God gave all creatures, really, the ability to change and adapt to their location. For example, you have a long-haired dog and you have a short-haired dog. They are awesome in certain locations. So a short-haired dog, like a Chihuahua, would never, ever survive in Alaska or the Arctic Circle. Never could. But Huskies, who have the long fur and are just perfect for the cold weather, could never survive in some place like Arizona in the 120-degree heat without some serious help, And yes, some people have them there, but those Huskies are generally climbing into the fridge or in the freezer or crawling into a bathtub. And when the snow's out, the Huskies are laying out in the snow because that's where they're happy. They don't want to be in a heated house. They want to be outside and cold because that's how God designed them. And evolution is not, it doesn't describe that. Evolution says that the creatures, they have DNA and information added to them in order to evolve and become healthy for whatever. We've never seen any DNA be added. We've only seen DNA deteriorate. That's why back in the very beginning of the world, all the animals were strong and beautiful and virile, and there were not as many kinds then. God created, most likely, although it doesn't say exactly, but we can infer from the ark that God started with at least one of each kind. So as we see in the ark, one of each kind, one pair of each kind, or even 7 pairs of the clean kinds, go on the ark. That doesn't mean that you have every variation of a frog going on the ark or every variation of a whale, although whales didn't go on the ark, but of dogs, of cats. You probably had a big cat come on, and then all of the other variations came after the flood. So that's That's pretty cool to think about. But God thought from perfection. Perfection. No need for anything to die. No need for anything to eat anything else. None of that was going on. You go from that to now where there's so much death and there's so much disease and there's so much sorrow and death. God never created us to die. But he knew that sin was coming and he knew that death was coming. And so he created it within our DNA, within our code of every single creature, from humans to mosquitoes and gnats and the little teeny tiny amoebas that float down in the deepest parts of the ocean. God put in every single living organism and non-living organism either as well, like oceans. Did you know that our oxygen levels never change? In the whole world, our oxygen levels do not change. They always stay at the same level. No matter how much the icebergs melt, no matter how much the oceans rise and then, can refreeze again, no matter how much things change, the oxygen level is still the same. Because God set it. He set the thermostat, as it were, on our world. And he said, this is where it's going to be, and it's not going to change until I remove it at the end of all things. And we know the end of all things is at least 2,000 years more from here, because we first have to have the Antichrist, the major one. There's little Antichrists. There's people who are Antichrist, who hate God. There are a lot of them out there in the world right now, if you just look around. But there's the big one who goes on a killing spree of anyone who's not even a Christian, but anyone who stands against him. And in that time, those who stand against him, God's saying, they're mine, because they're not following that complete and total evil. So keep that in mind, So we have that. God comes back and wipes out the Antichrist and his mouthpiece, puts him in the pit of hell. And then Jesus comes and rules and reigns. He comes and rules and reigns on our planet for another 1,000 years. And then he releases Satan from the pit that he has been put in. And he gets to rule and reign for another 1,000 years. And then God comes back and everything's gone. So our earth has minimum 2,000 years left. And all this can be found in Revelation. We will do a deep dive in Revelation at some point as well. But this is Genesis. But I speak about Revelation because it's all connected. Because it's all about Jesus, who is creating everything in the very, very, very foundations of our world. He's the one there creating and doing. And he will be there just saying, okay, we're going to start over with something that you guys have never imagined. You cannot imagine, and nothing will be as it has been. Meaning there will be no sin anymore for those who love and serve God and have finished the race here on earth with excellence and have not turned their back on God. As long as you finish excellently and you do not turn your back on God. And anyone who truly loves God cannot turn their back on him truly. That is another thing we will address later. But we're almost out of time, and I don't have time to go into another whole the section and study on the next section in the Bible. So I apologize, but this will be a little bit shorter than the 15 minutes. But I think the 15-minute videos will probably do us the best. And I hope that's okay with all of y'all. I hope it's not too long. So be blessed. And until I see you again, be blessed and follow Jesus.